I just have a few other questions, if I may, and might maybe just bring in a few of the others as well. And actually, Michael, for Mr. Kelly here, for founder and CEO of for the Grow at School program, it's 4 years. It's 4 years that this program has been going on. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct.
So 4 years, and at the moment you're literally in about 132 primary schools, and you have great ambition here to get to 1,600 schools by 2024. And you've noted here that that's half of all primary schools. I mean, it's an absolutely wonderful initiative, and I suppose you always think of primary schools maybe in more rural areas. I'm sort of Roscommon and Galway in the west, but you'd imagine that they would have a little bit of space.
Yeah.
You would imagine that, but then, they're also trying to manage, safe sort of pick up and drop off zones. They're trying to manage parking. Like, you'd be surprised that in rural areas that there really isn't a huge amount of space when you're on busy country roads and you're outside of maybe 50k zone. So I suppose just around schools accessing that space, how does it work? Do schools engage with maybe the local authority? Do they engage with the neighbours around them? Is it just plots, like is it window boxes that you're looking at that are done within a room? I suppose I was just curious about that. And then I suppose it's been mentioned about just, the importance of that understanding about working with soil, like that it is understanding where food comes from. And now we have 8 billion people on the planet, 1 billion more in the last 12 years. Do you know, like how, I suppose with the children that we're working with and about food and understanding about food, about being active and healthy eating, I suppose is something to do with that. So is there, with the Grow Your Own, is there something there about, like, say, protein, carbohydrates, sort of how children understand that, when you eat this, this gives you this type of energy, and when you eat this, is that part of the program that you deliver as well? So just a few questions there.
Thank you. So how it works is we provide an actual kit. It's basically 4 raised beds. They're relatively small, like meter square raised beds. And we've created a kind of a growing plan around that kind of framework, effectively, that each school can they can grow 14 different types of vegetables within the academic year. So we provide like all of the information that a teacher would need to make that garden a success, basically. And often teachers, like any adult, they might be a bit daunted by the idea of running a school garden program because they may not have the expertise. So kind of giving them the skills to be confident about doing that is a really important part of it. So because it's effectively 4 raised beds of that size, like most schools can facilitate that space. I was in a school in a very urban environment in Waterford, in Deputy O'Cossig's constituency, that they literally had it in a backyard in the school that wasn't being used, and it was on a concrete plinth, effectively. So it can go pretty much anywhere. That's the beauty of it.
You get to eat the fruits of your labour as well, yeah?
Yeah, well, exactly. And to your point then about the connection with soil and helping children to understand where their food comes from, that is an absolute critical life skill that unfortunately most children today just don't have. They don't understand that peas come from a plant. They think they come from a plastic package, that they see in a. So there's a huge amount of work to do to develop that food empathy, as we call it, which is a kind of a deeper understanding of where your food comes from and your place in the food system.
I must admit, I grew up on a farm, so we had a garden, and my God, like when the peas became ripe, I would literally be sitting in the garden. They were so tasty, my God. And then, when it came to baby potatoes, it's just when you can grow your own veg and the sweetness, it's just incredible. So I just think it's a great gift to give.
And to your point, I completely agree with that. And to your point about kind of a good teacher can use food growing as a kind of a foundational thing that they can then weave into all sorts of subjects. So you can use it in maths, you can use it in well-being, SPHE, English, geography. It can be used as a teaching tool for any subject.
Yeah, really. I think it would be great to tie in, particularly with, say, the Sport Ireland programme. Like, they were doing marathon for kids, and that was rolled out, particularly in vulnerable areas. But it's where children in primary school in 5th and 6th class learn to run a marathon over a space of maybe 5 or 6 weeks, and they do 100, 200 metres, but there's also a food plan around that, about how you build up your energy resources to be able to run those distances. And I just think that would be a great way to tie in what you're doing with what's been delivered in schools, maybe through Sport Ireland and through that programme. If I might just pose a question as well to Ms. Kathleen Moran, just around the libraries and school libraries. And you spoke very well, and I know that you've been in touch with us, and I loved your sign off on your email where you indicated what you're reading, what you're currently reading, and I just thought that's great. And we'll all get the time to do that as well. And audiobooks, I think, are a great way as well, probably when you're on the move a lot, I think, to start reading as well, or to listen. I suppose just for me, and I know Deputy Conway Walsh spoke about the libraries in her area as well, but it was absolutely fantastic last week because we had the launch of My Open Library in, for Galway County Council. We were the first in Galway, in Ballinasloe, to have it. And this new initiative is where the library will be open from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. So in other words, you'll have a card to access the library. And where the library is based in Ballinasloe, it's right beside our Desh Level 1 Skull and Creanefa, literally right beside it. And hopefully we're going to get a brand new school there eventually when that goes through planning. But it's been absolutely crucial to have those supports. And I suppose I do see in the library how they engage with the students, and particularly the parents that come to collect the students. I sometimes think there's a lot of initiatives there that we could work on to bring parents in, because I think sometimes the challenges for some of the schools is that engagement from parents to volunteer, to be part of parents' associations, to volunteer onto boards. We're sort of seeing that there's a stepping back sometimes in our schools. And then I suppose, how do we support parents getting more involved? And is there ways that our libraries can help with that? And through the school libraries, and you spoke particularly around the Junior Cert school programme and how that needs to become more available. We've seen the increase in DESH, for example, to 1 in 4 schools now with the announcement last year. I suppose if I can just ask you to comment on that, I suppose that those schools should have access, or could have access, to the digital supports as well through the library. And I suppose is there anything else maybe that you'd like to comment on that part?
Thank you, Deputy or Senator. First of all, I would say we think it's extremely important to distinguish between what the public library service can offer and what school library services can offer. I'm as strong an advocate for the public library services as anyone has been. I've worked from a library assistant to city librarian within the public library service, and I can see all of the services that are offered there. But there is a whole tranche of the population who don't or cannot access the services of the public library. When the JCSP Library project was set up, which was set up as a research project initially, and that was one of the things that was evaluated as to the level of usage by the students in our schools of the public library service. And the figure that was found there was 4%. 4% of the students in the JCSP Library Project schools use the public library service.
And when you say the JCSP library schools, how many schools is that, sorry?
At that stage, there were 11 set up in the first tranche. There are currently 30.
30 primary schools?
Second level schools.
Oh, sorry, 30 secondary level schools.
The Junior Certificate School programme itself operates in 223 schools in the country, and of those, 30 of them have libraries and librarians.
So 233 primary schools?
Second level schools.
Sorry, apologies. Yes. So you have the JCSP programme in 30 post-primary, and you have school libraries in 233?
The other way around. The JCSP programme is in 223 schools, and 30 of those schools have JCSP libraries and librarians.
Okay.
But the cohort of students that we focus on particularly, as I said, initially 4% of them used public library services. Now, there's lots of reasons, but in some cases they would be adjacent. They would be in cities and towns, so they may be adjacent, but they just do not see public library services being for them, or their families don't. So over those years, we did some follow-up research a number of years later, and these would have been on students that had one of our libraries from first year in second level, and they were now in fifth or sixth year. Yeah. That researcher found that some 50% of those students now use their public library service for borrowing, yes, but also perhaps for study space or whatever, because they had been introduced to it through the school. So again, I would come back to saying, if you want to engage young people in these services, you have to get them at school level. Yeah, and they will move on from that. And as early as possible, obviously, at primary school level before secondary. And you mentioned the digital library service, as we spoke before. Yes. We offer a digital library service to all DESH schools in the country, all second level DESH schools, pre-2022 second level DESH schools, because the 38 schools that have joined this year have not been facilitated to join, unfortunately. But again, audiobooks hugely popular.
Okay.
across our students. There was some 85,000 items borrowed from that library last year by students right across the country. So it's a fantastic service. But unfortunately, we were promised additional funding this year to service all of those schools, but it has not come through. So it's looking like we may have to cut the service as opposed to expand it, which is very unfortunate. So we do think it's so important to look at what can be done, what is there that is valuable and supported. But unfortunately, we don't seem to be going that way. So we would ask the committee has supported the expansion of that to become a national service, but it's actually going the other way at the moment. It's actually going to be cut. I've had a significant cut in funding this year. So
those recommendations, I think, were in the have been
supports for Ukrainian and displaced students and leaving certificate reform. Yes.
Thank you very much, Kathleen. I think it's absolutely crucial. I have a secondary school in my own town that just recently joined, I know, in the DESH programme as well. So it's crucial that we get those services delivered. Can I just ask two final questions, if I might, just as well for Dr. Muldoon? If I might ask, the Department of Health established the National Youth Mental Health Task Force in 2017. If you might be able to describe maybe just efforts to engage with relevant departments in implementing the Pathfinder project, if you're able to maybe comment on that. And then just finally for the Grow at School, sorry Michael, just one other question for yourself. Did GIY link in with the school meals programme to encourage children to eat what they're growing? So that, I suppose, the school meals programme would come from the Department of Rural and Community Development, I suppose, as well. And I suppose the other question I had with you was the Sport Ireland one. And I suppose just Mr. Cunacon, am I pronouncing it correctly? My apologies if not. I suppose just you've talked about, I think previously with the deputies here, just about the types of activities that you do. I suppose just for me to comment that I just think what you do is absolutely amazing. I suppose the creativity, been able to open up a child's mind to sort of see that the world does not have to be the way that they see the world right now and how they can perceive it in the future. I just think it's one of the fantastic things that Fighting Words do and does on a daily basis, and really look forward to seeing that being rolled out even more. 240,000 students is a wonderful achievement, so thank you. Thank you, and that's just the final round of questions, and then we might just ask you to make final comments at the end of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And in regards to the Pathfinder project, it originated in 2014 as the civil service renewal project, where they were civil service agreed to show their agility and ability to adapt and change. They took a number of projects, 3 different projects. One of them was on mental health, and they agreed that the Department of Children, the Department of Education, the Department of Health would create a single unit to fund or staffed by various principal officers and APs from around the different agencies, the different departments, to allow for a smoother transition of children and youth mental health system. So again, acknowledging the fact that a teacher will refer a child for a mental health issue to the local GP, the GP will refer on to CAMS, and all 3 departments are engaged in that system, and to make it easier and make it smoother and to make everything work better. The funding was agreed for 5 years in a row. All 3 Secretary Generals agreed that it would happen, and it's never happened. Every time I've chased it for the last 5 years, the suggestion is that it's been done under Section 12 of the 1998 Civil Service Act. I think that's the Public Service Act. I'm not quite sure the logistic. But there's legislation there, and it needs a statutory instrument. But the Department of Health are the legal lead on that, and it hasn't happened yet. I've written to both and numerous different ministers on this, and I keep being pushed around in circles. Department of Public Expenditure are the final people because they fund it. They haven't got anything from Department of Health. Department of Health say they're working on it for the last 5 years, and it's imminent. Minister Butler, the last time she spoke in the Doyle and PQ was probably, that I'm aware of, was March, saying it's soon, it should be happening, but that's been said to me for the last 5 years, and imminent. I would hate to anything to be delivered in my staff that said imminent and didn't come for 5 years. So it really hasn't happened. And again, it's the whole idea of a Pathfinder is a little bit difficult to make it happen because you're finding your own path, but 5 years should be more than enough time to make it happen. And again, it's exactly what we need now when we're talking of moving things into a smoother, more holistic, cross-departmental work. If that unit was in place now, what we're suggesting in schools should be much easier to make happen. So if you have any support in that, it'd be great to see it happening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Muldoon. And Mr. Kelly, apologies.
Not a doctor yet.
On the way.
Thank you. Yeah, so We in GOI, we very much welcome the expansion of the school food programme. We think it's an absolutely critical thing to ensure that children that need access to like hot lunches and hot dinners and so on in school are able to receive that. It's brilliant that it has moved beyond sort of sandwiches and that sort of snacking into more substantial hot meals and that are nutritious. We ran a programme called Eat Together down in Waterford, which was where we actually focused around trying to sort of get children to sit and eat together, and the sort of social skills that are often missing. Deputy O'Cosig mentioned about families not sitting down together to eat as often anymore. So this programme was designed, it was a pilot programme where we sent hot lunches into the school where we had grown the vegetables in Grow HQ in Waterford, and the children sat together and sort of had a more kind of mindful experience of lunch, like they had the proper amount of time to eat, to sit and eat and enjoy that programme together, so much more like the way school lunches are enjoyed in French schools and so on. So we feel like the Grow at School is very complementary to the school food programme and very open to exploring further links there. I think our big challenge at the moment is it costs us around €2,000 to deliver a school garden and all the supports that go along with that. So you can imagine, with an ambition to reach 1,600 schools over 3 years, that's a massive funding ask that we have. We've raised about €600,000 so far into that programme, mainly from philanthropy. And so, we're really, I suppose, asking the committee to support us in trying to get the state to step up and at least contribute to that funding ask. I think it'll continue to be a mix of, philanthropy and CSR funding and so on. But, I think the state should be part of that funding mix to put food literacy at the heart of our education system.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kelly. And I might just, it's a note from Senator Aisling Flynn, and she just had a question here, so if I might read on her behalf. She just asked to excuse her absence today. She's speaking at the National Traveller Mental Health Conference in Croke Park. She notes that this week is College Awareness Week, and students across the country are planning their paths to college as we speak. Unfortunately, only 1% of the students who make it to third level will be from the travelling community, and this is the harsh reality. To bridge this gap, we must start with wraparound supports, particularly for marginalised groups, as early as primary school level. And again, these are Senator Aisling Flynn's words. My question is for the Ombudsman for Children. In your opening statement, you mentioned the English model, which involves providing mental health supports to school children using a joint approach from their Department of Education and Department of Health via the NHS. This joint working so close to a reduction of 1,000 children on the CAMHS waiting list in the past year in just one area that serves 10 schools. This can be seen in stark contrast to Ireland, where in the past year the CAMHS waiting list has grown. Can you elaborate on this model and tell the committee why it is important that the Irish Government should take the lead on this? So again, just a question on behalf of Senator Aisling Flynn.
I suppose again, just to reiterate that my understanding of the English model, and the committee have heard from professionals involved in it. It creates a team within what would they call it, a cluster of schools. I think in this case they talked about 10 schools, a team of 4 or 5 professionals who engage with those schools throughout the different levels. And it creates opportunities for the children to learn about mental health in its widest sense. It creates opportunities for the children to do peer work and group work together on mental health and emotional well-being. It creates opportunities for the parents to learn about it as well, and the teachers. So it upskills everybody within this education system around mental health. And then the children that need direct support have a clinical psychologist or a counsellor of some form, where they can do 8 to 10 sessions, I think is the sort of average. And they look at the mild to moderate level of mental health issues. So again, it's the child that's upset because their parents are separating, or they've just lost their grandmother, or whatever it might be. It's not serious, but it could turn into something more serious. And from that, they have found that within 1 year, they've been able to work with over 1,000 children, and though a lot of those children were already waiting for serious length of time to get into calm settings. And I think that's, to me, they've got research on it, they've got backup on it, they've been done it extremely well across departments. it has to be the model we start to build here. It doesn't have to be exactly the same here, but it has to be the model we start to look at recreating in an Irish setting. So from my point of view, I think, and it's very concerning, as the Senator says, that travellers, so few travellers make it as far as the end of secondary school, never mind on into university. And I think that's part of what we need to do, is we create that self-esteem we talk about in primary school, that holistic understanding of themselves as a child, the ability to dream bigger. Yes. And I think what we have to do too is, I've seen in many of the young children from traveller background, with so bright, our teachers are sometimes not able to see it. Yeah. They're working off old templates that they think every traveller that goes a certain direction, gets married early, leaves. Whereas we can now get a lot more younger children coming through who want to do education, want to complete it, and who are being supported by their parents within the traveller community to do that. So I think there's a lot of change needed from that point of view to get more into the university. And it's our education system that has to adapt as well to those young people. I've spoken to one or two young girls, 14, 15 years of age, who are, because their older sister got married at 16, the teachers weren't willing to work with them and said, we'll only give you a certain amount, you're going to be gone soon. And we need to change that old-fashioned thinking. So again, it's not everywhere, but we need to work on that part, and I think that's something we can see progressing hopefully in the future.
Thank you very much, and just thank you to Tara here as well on our team on the Secretariat, who just highlighted that it was Sarah Stockholm, Clinical Lead Dorset Mental Health Support Team, MHST, who presented here as well at the committee on the 8th of November last. So if I might just ask each of the members who are with us, the witnesses, perhaps to just give one key recommendation, and we'll use that as your closing statement or final statement here to the committee. But if you want to consider one key recommendation that you believe would make a significant difference to mental health supports in our schools, both primary and secondary, and potentially to our colleges as well, that would be very much appreciated. And if there's, I don't know, is there anything else from the committee that we wish to continue? But we might use that as a way just to thank you as well, just really for your contribution today. We've explored, I think, many different areas, and it's great to learn so much more about the activities that you do as well. So will I start with maybe Mr. Kelly, and maybe go in that way around the table, if that's okay?
Yeah. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today. I suppose my key recommendation to the committee is that we feel we've, a programme that works successfully in schools. It's been piloted in well over 130 schools at this stage, and we want to take it to every primary school in Ireland. Government is thankfully doing a lot of work supporting social enterprises, and we are a social enterprise that develop a programme that we think can embed food literacy in our education system permanently, and establish school gardens as a kind of a foundational skill that every child goes through our school system, knowing where their food comes from and how to produce food. And we'd love any support that any of the members of the committee can give us to help make that a reality.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much, Michael. And Ms. Suzanne Connolly on behalf of Bernardo's.
Yeah, well, I suppose I would like the committee to really also look at programmes that are not just Bernardo's, but other programmes that are evidence-based and that work, and to really think about ways of supporting those. I mean, I haven't looked at the Dorset model in detail, but I wonder about that level of resource for mild issues. I think there's a lot of programmes that can support mild. I think you do need that resource for things that aren't mild, moderate and above. So I would just caution, heavy resources in relation to mild. And what I said as well is evidence-based, and the capacity to implement is really important. So I know there's questions about resources in terms of staffing as well.
So thank you very much, and thank you for your contribution today. Mr. Cullum, if you'd like to speak on behalf of Fighting Words.
So for the Department of Education, the National Council for Curriculum and Assessment, the Teaching Council, as the key agencies, looking at space in the curriculum and what happens in our schools, there needs to be a recognition of the evidence and the importance around arts and creativity in schools, and the space for creative education, creative writing, creative play in school at every level. and linked to that, teacher education to ensure that teachers have the skills, confidence and capabilities to deliver on creative education methodologies that will provide the kind of space then for children to enjoy well-being and mental health at a different level in the school system.
And also have some fun. Thank you very much. And if I can ask Dr. Niall Muldoon on behalf of the Ombudsman.
Yeah. I suppose I'm delighted to be and excited to hear this new initiative from the Department of Education around therapy within schools. And I think we need to build it properly and allow it to grow into from primary through to secondary as well, so that every child has the opportunity and takes away the stigma of engaging with therapeutic services and see it as a holistic support for them throughout their lifetime.
Very good. Thank you so much for your contribution. And Ms. Kathleen Moran on behalf of the school libraries.
First of all, thank the committee for inviting us here today. I suppose if I was to do one ask, would be to ask the committee to broaden your understanding of what school libraries can bring to the table in terms of mental health supports and all sorts of supports to students. And having that space within a school, a place of sanctuary and a place of safety is hugely important. Just to quote one other librarian who gave me a quotation for today, she said that she had a student over a number of years who suffered serious mental health issues and bullying and stress, and she said she came to the library most days to cry and to have a place to go to cry, and when she left the school she said it was probably what saved her in school, being able to come out of the routine which she was finding so difficult, and to having a place, and that place is hugely important, and it can be what we want to make it to be. The term library is so much more than about books, so that would be my final.
So we need a new title.
Yes. Well,
I suppose I just want to thank everyone for coming into us. I know there may be one or other member, I think, who may be attempting to join us, but I don't know if there's any other questions that I would like to ask. One thing I would just sort of say is just that one good adult, I know, Kathleen, that you spoke about in your submission, I suppose that one good adult, it's an unusual term, isn't it? That you would assume that in a child's life that there would be, a few people, but I suppose it's a trusted person, or sometimes that they're able to speak in confidence and in a safe space. And as you said, that the libraries would give a safe space and that we would expand that as well within our school libraries. Space is an issue for a lot of schools, unfortunately. We need a lot more space. We need new school buildings, and I think that's a challenge.
Can I just add that in new schools as they're being built in second level schools, library spaces are being included.
Yes,
and they are being unsuitable, I would say, furniture, but they are being furnished, but they aren't staffed. So and no other space within the school. Home economics room has a teacher, science room has a teacher. So this space, the money is being put into creating it. That final step is missing. So
maybe it's about looking at how we open that up. Yeah. What I will do is just give me 1 second just to check the clerk on one point. Oh, yeah. So I just want to thank the witnesses again and really appreciate your time, especially with our committee here today. And like I said, it's been absolutely rich. We should invite you, Mr. Kelly, to come and set up a garden here in the Oireachtas. I think we would benefit a lot actually from growing our own veg and eating well. Although we do eat quite well, I suppose, in our canteen here. But just to thank you all and a wonderful library that we have here as well. Just to thank the witnesses for coming here today. The discussion today has been a very productive one on an issue of great importance. Just to commend you all in your Trojan efforts to support young people in very innovative and creative ways. I speak on behalf of all committee members when I say that your insights accentuate the positive in young people and proactively promote good mental health. This meeting